Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another AAA Car Conversations with. My name's John Paul, AAA's car doctor. And with me this time in this Conversations with is Sam Fiorani. Sam Fiorani is the Vice President of Global Vehicle Forecasting for AutoForecast Solutions. Sam, I had to double check to make sure I got that right, to make sure we put you in the right light here. So thank you for joining us on AAA Car Conversations with.
Oh, anytime. Glad to be here.
And first off, tell us about the company you work for and a little bit about your background.
Well, AutoForecast Solutions has been around for 7 years now. The core group of us have been together as a group for 20 plus years. So we've been doing this a long time. We worked for a bunch of the major analysis companies, providing data for the automotive industry for quite a while. You and I met when I worked for Standard & Poor's DRI in Lexington.
That's right.
Where I did a similar job to what I do now, but working for Standard & Poor's at the time.
So do you guys all wear wizard hats and stare into crystal balls to kind of come up with answers to things? Or
I have my magic 8-ball over here somewhere, and we do use a little bit of that, but a lot of the work we do is knowledge of the industry, knowledge of how companies typically interact with different markets. If a company brings out a pickup truck or a sports car or something like that, we have to know how their buyers traditionally like that product and how it interacts with the other products in the marketplace. Every time a manufacturer comes out with a new vehicle, their goals are pie in the sky. And they think, well, we're going to sell every one we can possibly build. So we're going to sell 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 of these things. And usually companies come to us and say, no, really, what are they going to do? And we take in the market forces and the competition and figure out, well, they're not going to sell 200,000. They're going to sell 120,000. And as a supplier or a financial house or whoever needs the information, they need to balance that out between what their contract says that they need to hit 200,000 and where we think they're going to be so they can make their business case.
And, this past year has been tough with COVID for both on the manufacturing side, the parts supplier side, and the retail side. There has been in the past few months, certainly a bit of a turnaround there. And it looks like maybe things are starting to go in the right direction, but it looked pretty bleak about a year ago, right?
Oh, absolutely. This whole, the automotive marketplace is great because it's usually pretty steady. But then they throw in these monkey wrenches like the financial situation of a decade ago and COVID last year. When you throw in these monkey wrenches like this, it throws everything up in the air, and our job becomes even more crucial, figuring out when things are going to come back, when people are going to start buying again, when vehicles are going to be able to be produced. There's a whole bunch of different pieces to this puzzle.
And the other thing I just read the other day about, you don't think about this, but until you think about it, there is a chip shortage and a foam shortage. And so apparently there's not enough foam to make seats. And there was a fire at a chip factory, which has impacted chip manufacturing around the world. And that has, again, thrown one of those monkey wrenches into this business.
The chip shortage started with COVID, where the chip manufacturers didn't expect the automotive industry to bounce back as quickly as it did. So they weren't ready. On top of that, you had the fire that they had at another plant. We have the weather in Texas that screwed up the petrochemicals, which screwed up foam. So now we have a foam shortage. On top of that, we had a steel problem. Hot rolled steel has gone up in price to the point where it's going to cost more to put steel into cars. Even the ship in the Suez Canal is throwing off things globally. So there's a lot of things going on right now that don't normally happen in the industry.
Well, it looks like as of this date, they have the ship moved a little bit so you can get by it. So that's the good news. But who would have ever thought that a giant container ship would turn sideways in the Suez Canal and, take out billions of dollars worth of business, I guess, or over, on it day over day. So it pretty interesting stuff. And again, when you look at and when you work at this and you look at what happens, customers are kind of constantly changing on the retail side as well. There was a time, 6, 7, 8 years ago that a lot of people were saying, oh, um, millennials aren't that interested in cars, and the generation in front of millennials had no interest in vehicles. And now it seems like some of those folks had kids and said, we need to get cars now. And so the idea of your ability to stay focused without, I guess, taking some of the emotional stories you hear must be part of the challenge as well.
Oh, I've been in the automotive industry professionally for the last 30 plus years. I've been interested in cars all my life. So I've been following the people in the industry, the people in the hobby, all these different groups together. And for years, as you said, they said the next generation and the generation after that aren't interested in cars, but that really wasn't that true. They may have delayed getting a driver's license because they didn't need to. They were doing things virtually before we were doing things virtually. They were on phones and devices, and they didn't really need to congregate. So, but by the time they got to 18 and 21, suddenly a car was important. And as you said, as they had families, it becomes even more important. And then with COVID, and they don't want to share an Uber, they don't want to share a Lyft. Suddenly people are buying cars for that reason, to get out of a shared vehicle.
Yeah. Volvo in the last couple of weeks said they're going to go to online buying, and I guess still have their dealers, but they're going to kind of have a fixed price and online buying. Do you have any thoughts about that? Do you think, I mean, I guess that's almost what Tesla does today, but do you think that's the future, or is this something you think Volvo's just trying out, testing the waters with?
Well, Volvo's testing it out with electric vehicles. They've concentrated on just their new electric vehicles. But with all the virtual things that we've learned to do over the last year, and dealers are learning to do that as well, there is a lot of online buying coming, and it may be the future. Maybe people don't want to sit in a dealership, and it will partially be the factory when you have these new startups like Tesla and Rivian and Volvo's EV cars. But franchise laws are going to make it very difficult for manufacturers to sell exclusively online. It's going to have to be dealers selling online until some laws get changed in most of the states around the country.
Yeah. And personally, and it may be my age, but I still want to go out and look at the car, touch the car, make sure it's the car that I want. The idea of buying something online and, from a gigantic vending machine and have a car suddenly show up at my house.
Yeah.
I have enough trouble doing that just with normal online buying, let alone something as expensive as a car.
I'm fully with you on that. When you spend $20 on clothing or whatever you buy online, that's one thing. Those are commodities. But when you buy a car, the older generation are used to the cars that had the Monday morning or Friday afternoon build quality.
Right.
It's a lot less than it used to be. The cars are a lot more homogeneous, but still there's something about getting in the car, the tactile feel of the steering wheel, the seat, the look out the window. I can't imagine spending, now the average is $40,000. I can't imagine spending $40,000 on anything without actually touching the product.
Yeah. And it's so important today to not just road test the car, but road test the tech inside the car.
Oh,
and you can't do that with videos and, and interaction. Even if you do something like this, a video interaction with the salesperson or the manufacturer, you're still not going to know how that tech works for you. And I don't have the newest phone, for instance, but I noticed in some of the newest cars that I drive, the charging pad, which is kind of a nice feature, you don't have to hook up a cable to it to charge your battery. And sometimes the charging pad isn't big enough to charge the phone, right, because they developed the charging pad before they developed phones as big as they are today. So
right. Oh yeah. No, a lot of things, like you said, all the digital things in a car, the infotainment system on a car is a very tactile thing. I need to know where those buttons are, because they're not physical buttons anymore. So I need to know how much distraction do I have when I need to change to the navigation or change a radio station or adjust the temperature in the car. How much distraction is that going to be? Is this going to annoy me a month from now that I can't find whatever it is? My car personally, I got annoyed because it has a button for satellite radio. It's not a physical button, it's a digital button.
Yeah.
But you cannot upgrade the radio to satellite radio.
Oh.
And I'm like, okay, so they didn't take the digital button off, but it's there, and I had to get an aftermarket radio to put in for the satellite radio.
Yeah, so if you were looking online and you saw that, you would automatically assume you could. But
There's the button right there. Why can't I get it?
Why can't you? Yeah, no, it is. I think that's one of the things that, and people still, and of course, you and I were talking a minute or so before this, and my commute has changed from 47 miles to about a couple dozen steps. So I'm not in my car as much as I used to be, which is typical of a lot of people. But prior to that, I was in my car 3 hours a day.
Yeah.
Now, 3 hours a day is a long time to be in your car. And that was just going back and forth to work, not saying that I was going out and doing other things. So 3 hours a day in a car that doesn't satisfy your needs can be a bit frustrating.
Absolutely. No, I've told a lot of people that, when they look at a car, oh, that's a great looking car. Like, how does it feel inside? You're going to spend all your time inside. Does the seat fit you? Do the gauges sit where you want? Are the sight lines out of the car, do they fit you? Do they bother you? Is there something in the way? One of my dream cars, I finally got a chance to drive a couple years ago, and I'm like, I can't see out of this car. I hate from the driver's seat, but on paper it looked beautiful. And when you get in the car, you physically were annoyed by the sight lines.
Yeah, I mean, that absolutely can happen. And even though, some of these companies will probably offer some sort of, if you don't like it in a couple of days, call us back, and we'll return it. But I don't like returning stuff I buy online anyway. That doesn't always go that well. And like you said, with a $40,000 plus investment, how, it's a lot to, I guess, put your faith into that it's all going to work out the way it should.
Yeah, it's
now
one thing
certainly we
$20
talked about
socks.
Yeah. We talked about Volvo and electric cars. GM's even sort of changed their logo to kind of look like a plug. And they're going to be, 100% electrification in Massachusetts, where I live. All new cars in 15 years are supposed to be electric. What are your studies showing as far as electric vehicles, both from the manufacturer's side, but also consumer acceptance? How are your studies showing that consumers are going to accept electric vehicles, and are they excited about it?
Our job is to figure out what the market is going to, how many vehicles are going to be out there, things like that. And we did a study for 2040, the best case scenario by 2040, that will have 40+% of the global market being EV, which means that 60% of the market will have an internal combustion engine. Best case scenario for EVs. And so we really don't think it's going to happen that quickly. Consumers will make the transition. The problem is more, how long does it take me to charge this vehicle? Will it get me? Americans are the anomaly in the world, because when you live in Europe, or you live in China, or you live in Japan, your commute is shorter, you drive less, the streets are narrower, all the differences in the way people use cars make their products different. Americans want to be able to get in the car and drive 400 miles in a sitting, and you can't do that in an electric vehicle. So if I were to take an electric vehicle and drive it 300 miles, I have to let it charge for hours before I can take it any substantial distance again. So it becomes different for us as Americans to want to buy an EV to replace our main vehicle.
Right.
So the idea of having it as a secondary vehicle is a great idea, but that means you still have to maintain a gas-powered car. All the laws in the United States, California, Massachusetts, New Jersey, a couple other states are looking at outlawing the sale of brand new internal combustion vehicles in the next 10, 15 years. So that goal is out there. those things will probably be delayed because of consumer acceptance, because of the electric grid, because of battery technologies, all kinds of different things that will get in the way. However, Europe, China, Japan, South Korea, those things could see those things happening much quicker. And so it'll boost the global need for electric vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, even to the point where, like you said, you can drive a couple hundred miles, 300. Maybe if you went out and bought a Lucid Air, you can drive 500 miles. But the bigger the battery, the longer the recharge time. So
Right.
even if you're charging it incredibly high voltage DC current, which no one recommends to do that on a regular basis because it's hard on the batteries.
Right.
But if you were doing that, it's still a matter of you're stopping for 20 minutes to an hour every 4 or 5 hours, which realistically you probably should stop every few hours and take a break anyway. But the idea that you have to do that and you're tied into that becomes a little bit more of a challenge. And
Right.
I know years back when the BMW i3 came out with the little gasoline engine with the 2 gallons of gas it kept. And I'm like, well, this is kind of stupid, an electric car with a gasoline engine, until I ran out of electricity at about 60 miles. And it was like, having this little gasoline engine that could get me at least to the next gas station so I could fill up again until I got home actually wasn't a terrible idea. Now, that was a very low, that was an electric car that had a pretty short range.
Right.
Probably, like you said, ideal for Europe and China, but not ideal for somebody who commutes 100 miles round trip back and forth to work.
Right. Right. Yeah. You have that issue, and until more businesses offer plugs at work, um, there. If you walk around and you look places, you'll see charging stations everywhere. They just need to be in my office. They need to be at my grocery store. They need to be the places that I go every day, so that when I go there, I can just plug it in, do my business, get back out. I've got 5, 10, 20 minutes worth of charge while I'm there, and I can go somewhere else.
And like you said, even with, the federal government is supporting electric vehicles, and there's money out there to add some incredible number of charging stations. I heard, 500,000 charging stations or something. But then you have to know that the electrical grid can support that type of usage. And right now across the country, we see brownouts in high electrical demand areas. And there's some thought that your electric vehicle, when it's plugged into your home, will work sort of backwards and support the grid by selling your battery power back to the grid, sort of thing, to balance it all out.
Right.
But there's a lot of steps in between suddenly opening the equivalent of what we have today for gas stations, right?
Oh, yeah, no, you need to, it's not like a gas station where you're going to stop every 5 minutes. You want to be able to charge wherever you stop.
Right.
So if I'm going for lunch, if I'm going for dinner, if I'm going to the grocery store, if I'm going to the drugstore, wherever, I want to be able to plug it in and let me do my business and get a little charge out of it.
Yeah. That being said, you said that, in the next 15 or 20 years, best case is 40% of the vehicles on the road are electric.
Fully electric.
Just today we had a meeting at work, and we were talking about a couple of years ago, autonomous vehicles were all kind of what was the discussion, in the news and the media. And today, I asked the same question: how many people are interested in an autonomous vehicle? And there was 15 people on our call this morning, and 2 or 3 people raised their hands. And I said, how many people are interested in an electric car? And probably 70% of the people raised their hands.
Oh, yeah.
So certainly there is interest in electric cars, even in a very small sampling like that. When manufacturers come to you with this sort of pie in the sky that they want to sell as many electric cars as they did gasoline, how does your business kind of bring them back to earth, I think?
It's a lot of things changing, and the mindset takes a long time to change. How long ago was it that nobody wore a seatbelt, and now 95% of people drive with seatbelts? it takes a while for this mindset to adjust to the new normal, and the new normal being electric vehicles eventually.
Eventually.
We'll get there in 20, 30 years that you will go to a dealership and not think twice that it's electric. We had trouble getting people to get to diesel 30, 40 years ago when it was popular. But electric is the next move in that direction.
Yeah.
And a lot of manufacturers understand that, but they also understand that the media now is catering to stockholder pricing. So General Motors comes out and says, we're going to target 2035 to be all electric. That is more towards the stockholders to say, we are a technology company. We are not a legacy automobile manufacturer. So we're coming up and we have new things to talk about. We are not stuck in our old ways. And you saw their stock price go up when they made the announcement. So it's going that direction, but it's not going that direction as fast as they're saying it's going to. And I'm pretty sure they understand that it's not going to happen that quickly either.
Where do you see hydrogen in this picture?
Hydrogen is a long-term play. We need to find clean ways to make hydrogen. We need an infrastructure to deliver it. Fuel cells, to me, are the next step after electric vehicles. And the problem with electric vehicles is you still have that battery. The good thing about electric vehicles is they use the same drivetrain that you will use for a fuel cell. You just replace the battery with a fuel cell. So the idea of being able to refuel in a few minutes, just like you do with your gas car, and then have no exhaust emissions as you drive along, that's the dream.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree 100%.
But it is a while off.
Yeah, I think to me, electric seems like the interim step until hydrogen becomes practical and reasonably priced, and all of those things that you look at. You mentioned diesel.
Not only reasonably priced, but clean to make. The problem is that it uses so much carbon energy now to make hydrogen that we need to find a cleaner way to do it, a cheaper way to do it, and a better way to get it out to everybody.
Yeah, the best way to make hydrogen is with a nuclear reactor, and who wants one of those in their backyard, right? Yeah. Yeah,
I'm all a fan of a solar powered energy hydrogen station everywhere. Just crack the water right there, break it into hydrogen and oxygen, give you the hydrogen, let the oxygen into the atmosphere. We're good to go.
Yeah, it sounds that simple. We should all do it. But yeah,
it's just that
unfortunately,
easy.
it doesn't work quite as easily as that. You mentioned diesel, and you're an automotive enthusiast, and you and I probably both agree that the most fun you could probably have would be a diesel car with a manual transmission, which is probably something we'll never see again for an awfully long while. And if that diesel car with the manual transmission happened to be a little wagon, even happier, that you could use it for, whether it's a BMW or a, Jetta sport wagon, with the diesel engine and a manual transmission, those were fun cars to drive and pretty practical at the same time.
Yeah. No, you look around and journalists are the only people who want a station wagon, stick shift, diesel, all-wheel drive. And, it's 400 people in the United States who want them. And you and I are among the few that actually look for that vehicle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because you kind of have your kind of finger on the pulse, and this is almost a little bit silly, but Ford came out with the Mustang Mach-E. The Mustang Mach-E has had rave reviews. It's done really, really well. Is it just because of my advanced age that I have a problem with a 4-door hatchback SUV Mustang? I would have been much happier if they just called it the Mach-E.
Well, I fully understand that. Hanging out with people, especially people in the hobby, people who collect cars and bring car shows, they are very, very sensitive about their nameplates. You can't touch Bel Air, you can't touch Mustang, you can't all these different names that hold a special place in collectors' minds. But names have to evolve or else they're going to die. Mustang is definitely one of those ones where it is a small niche. It is two-door coupes and convertibles and rear-wheel drive and big V8 engines. And that's going to go away.
Yeah.
And so if you don't evolve into something more modern, we're going to lose the name. And we lost Camaro once already, and we're probably going to lose it again. So if the Mustang doesn't evolve into something more practical and more useful going forward, the name will disappear. We lost Thunderbird. We lost, name all the classic names that we've lost over the last 20, 30 years because the market just shrank. This is one of those things. And with using the Mustang name, making an EV in this day and age is impractical because people are going to want something special out of it. They don't, the electric vehicles of 40 years ago were lead acid batteries. They were slow. They were terrible to charge. The new ones are nice modern cars, but you're not going to sell a car just because it's electric. You're going to sell a car because it has an image, and a Tesla has an image. People want to own a Tesla. They don't necessarily want to own an electric vehicle. So they're buying the Tesla. Well, in this case, they're buying a Mustang. It's a Mustang Mach-E, it's electric, it's four-door, but it's a Mustang. If they did the same thing for the Corvette name or for the Challenger name, something else like that, these could appeal to buyers and say, oh, I'm not just buying an electric vehicle, I'm buying a Mustang.
Yeah, no, absolutely good point. I'm gonna write it off as my grumpy old age or something. So
I've been a big fan of Mustangs all my life too. So it was a difficult transition, but it's a necessary one.
Yeah. Something that we're starting to see the beginning of maybe is pickup trucks have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the compact pickup truck is almost the same size as some of the pickup trucks from the 70s and earlier. A true compact pickup truck, it looks like, what made me think of it, you mentioned some of the names that we've lost. There's some thoughts that Ford may be coming out with a smaller pickup truck called the Maverick. Yeah. And Hyundai is coming out with, what is it, the Santa Cruz, kind of an El Camino sort of Hyundai. Based on your research, and my gut feeling is there's a need for small pickup trucks. There's a need for smaller, more affordable trucks that don't cross that average vehicle price of $40,000, that are truly, affordable trucks that are going to get you where you want to go, run to the home improvement store. You're not going to put a ton of stuff in the back of it, but kind of that homeowner pickup truck. Are you seeing some of that in your research?
The prices of these trucks have just gone astronomical over there. When 40 years ago, that truck that is now the size of a Ranger or a Colorado was affordable. It was a utilitarian vehicle. It had you had to option up for carpeting and different pieces that are definitely standard on everything today. But the pickup truck today is a luxury vehicle. So you get to the smaller trucks, which are almost workaday trucks at times. Yeah. Even especially if you spec them out to $30,000 or less. But the smaller, the buyer of all trucks today, for the most part, is not dirtying the bed.
Right.
There's still the contractors, there's still the people who use them, but a large portion of these trucks are being used to drive back and forth to work. That bed never gets dirty. They may go to Home Depot and buy something and throw it in the bed and bring it home, but a lot of them just never get used as a truck. And a smaller truck could fit that niche of the guy who wants the image of a truck, but doesn't want the price or the gas mileage or the need of parking it outside because a truck doesn't fit in the garage.
Yeah, no, every time I see a original Ranger or a Toyota pickup, or even every once in a while I run into an old Datsun pickup, and I'm like, these were cool little trucks that, you could go get some pine bark mulch and some other fertilizer or whatever, that couple of times a year, or that time you needed to carry that, big box of something that's not going to fit in your normal size car. Perfect vehicle for that, but yet something that can get 30 miles per gallon and be comfortable enough to drive.
Right. No, the Maverick will be a smaller truck than a Ranger and more practical and less expensive. but it will be car based. So it's not
Yep.
going to be as rugged as your body on frame Ranger or Colorado or Tacoma. It'll fit a niche that isn't being filled right now. And the Maverick is the test. If the
Yep.
Maverick sells well, then you're going to start seeing other people jumping into there. The whole problem with a pickup truck, though, is it's got to be an American built vehicle
Right.
because of taxes and on trucks specifically.
The
So
chicken tax still exists, huh?
the chicken tax still exists. I love explaining that to people who don't understand where it came from or what it does. But the one thing it does is make sure that pickup trucks are built in North America.
Right.
And every time a truck appears somewhere in the world, oh, could this come to the United States? No, it cannot come to the United States because it costs 25% more.
Well, and I think the classic example of that is the old Subaru Brat
That's
with
my
the
favorite one.
with the plastic rear seats in it, so it was not a pickup truck.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's definitely my favorite example of that.
yeah,
That
no,
and
absolutely.
the fact that Toyota opened a plant in Long Beach, California, to put beds on trucks just so they were finished in the United States.
Right. No, absolutely. So, so we've covered the future. We've covered electric vehicles. We've talked about where the electricity is going to come from. The one thing we didn't talk about, we brought it up a couple times, is the average transaction price of a new car, $40,000, and up. The last GMC midsize pickup truck I drove now was fully loaded off-road package, $55,000. I looked at a Cadillac Escalade, $106,000. Cars that cost, more than homes did not that many years ago. At what point do you think the American buying public is going to cry uncle and say, you know what, we want a nice car, we want a safe car, we want to be able to take our kids to school, we want to be able to go to the grocery store, but 40, 50, $60,000 is just too much money for a car. And there are people that don't want to lease, and yeah, you can lease for a little bit less. But when it comes to outright buying, is there a pain threshold that you think people just don't want to cross at some point?
The pain threshold will be when car manufacturers don't sell 16, 17 million vehicles in a year. And as long as they're happy selling the number they're selling, the prices are not going to come down. The prices of used cars have gone up as well, but they're filling the gap. 20, 30, 40 years ago, a used car was dead at 100,000 miles. Today, 100,000 miles is broken in.
Right.
My fleet of cars with my family, my car has 86,000 miles on it. It's the lowest mileage car in our fleet.
Yeah.
So having a car with 100, 200,000 miles is a good practical second car or primary car even. And the prices of those can be had for $10 or $15 or $20,000. And like you said, on the off lease cars, I can buy a really good off lease car for $20,000, and it would be way nicer than I would spend on $30,000 brand new in the marketplace. So
Yeah.
the used cars are the new entry level cars.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I guess that is the case. That people are going to do that. And you're right. As long as people see the value in spending that sort of money for cars, auto manufacturers are going to continue to make them for that sort of money. So,
Right.
And even though there was, there's studies that show that, the Toyota Corolla you buy today versus the one you bought 20 years ago in, inflation adjusted dollars is probably cheaper, but it's still a $30,000 Corolla. And
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
a lot of money to spend on a Toyota Corolla, even if you are making more money and with cost of inflation. Yeah, it is. It's kind of interesting the way it all works. Before I let you go, you mentioned your dream car. What is it?
Oh, I at one point I wanted a Bricklin. I wanted a 74 Bricklin with an AMC engine and a stick shift. And I was working at a car show a number of years ago where I was the judge of a classic car show. And the AACA museum in Hershey brought their Bricklin out on the show field. And afterward, I'm like, can I drive that back to the museum? Oh, sure, get in. I get in there, it's a stick shift, it's everything. And the A-pillar was in my way. I couldn't see out the front of the car. I cannot believe this has crushed my dream.
Well, there's always a DeLorean. You can maybe go in that direction.
That's down the street. I'll try that one next.
Yeah. And for people who don't know, the Bricklin was a pretty unique car. It was developed by Malcolm Bricklin, the guy who brought us the Yugo to the United States,
and the Subaru.
and the Subaru. But I like to think of him as a Yugo. And it had gull-wing doors. It was a little bit underpowered, as I recall.
It was a safety vehicle. It
Yep.
was designed to, at the time when bumpers were coming in, that the bumpers were integrated, and it actually looked good with all its bumpers. But it had a decent sized V8 engine, and it was underpriced to start with, and they jacked the price up, and it was more expensive than a Corvette. So it was a
Yeah.
hard sell.
Yeah. No. Well, I wish you the best on trying to. Maybe you can find something that'll almost fit your fantasies, or and that's like most fantasies when they become reality. They lose the magic. So,
Absolutely.
Sam, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day and joining us on AAA Car Conversation with. And just again, Sam Fiorani, Vice President of Global Vehicle Forecasting for AutoForecast Solutions. Sam, thank you, and be well and stay safe.
Great talking to you. Take care of yourself, and take care. See you soon.